I'm going to preface this by stating, while I do enjoy a good paranormal story, I don't actually believe in any of it. I've never encountered a ghost. I detest most organized religions. No other freaky incidents that couldn't be explained with a little investigation, etc. That being said, there was one unexplained experience that potentially saved my life. So a few years ago, I noticed I was getting frequently ill. Common colds started to knock me off my feet and were happening rapidly. I was also losing a lot of weight, though I didn't mind. I could eat whatever I wanted. I knew in the back of my mind that something was wrong, but I wasn't ready to find out. I was scrolling through Facebook one day when I saw an article on HIV. My finger twitches, and I accidentally click it instead of scrolling. The second page loads. A clock that was nailed into my wall and had been hanging there for years flies off and smashes a good few feet away from said wall. I can't really explain what I was feeling at the moment. Goosebumps, really. My head was weird. It was a very surreal feeling. I ended up Googling what a clock smashing means, and one of the results said a clock smashing signifies death. I grabbed my coat and went to the sexual health clinic, got my test. Turns out, my immune system, CD4 count, had been severely damaged by undiagnosed, untreated HIV. A common cold could have turned into something much, much worse. Just a few weeks or months down the road and potentially killed me. I'm now medicated. Have been for years. Completely fine and healthy. I have to actually exercise and eat healthily to keep my weight in check. Which blows. But everything else is going well. I don't know what it was. A loose screw is all that comes to mind. But it doesn't account for the distance the clock traveled or even the force. This was a loud smash from behind me, as if it had been thrown across the room. I don't think about it often, but when I do, I still get goosebumps. Backstory time. My grandfather was a horrible man and he was dying of cancer. Basically, my grandfather abused 4 of his little girls and ended up doing serious time in prison because of it. He got out early because of his cancer. My sweet grandma, despite all that he put her through, still took him in. The rest of the family were very supportive of him during his final days, because he was family and they are very kind-hearted people. My grandfather died shortly after in hospice care and spoke his last words to me. Because I was 6, I had not yet learned of my grandfather's sins. I really looked up to him at this time, and all my cousins still tell me I was his favorite. After he passed, all the families went home to their houses. Mind you, none of us lived in the same cities. I will never forget that night. We had all just gotten home and we were very sad. I went into my room and shut the door. As I was getting ready for bed, I heard a faint knock on my window. I peeked through the blinds and saw the Grim Reaper holding my grandfather's spirit by the back of the collar. I couldn't actually see my grandfather in physical form, but I just knew that's how he was being held. The Reaper looked exactly how you would imagine. His dark hood covered his face, leaving nothing but the glare of his dark, reflective eyes peering out into my room. I also saw his Reaper hook, which looped over my grandfather's spirit. Mind you, I only looked out my window for maybe 3 seconds before screaming. The moment I screamed, all lights in my house flickered. I left my room and my sister and my parents met me in the hall. My mom's phone immediately started blowing out, with her siblings asking if the lights in our house had just flickered too. Apparently, all 6 of my aunts and uncles had the lights flicker in their houses the moment I screamed. None of them had a physical experience like mine, though. I told my dad that Grandpa and a bad man were outside my window. He frantically searched outside but saw no trace of anyone standing outside my window. I think about this experience a lot, especially after having a similar encounter after trying to communicate with my grandpa via Ouija board. That was before I found out what kind of person he really was. But that's a whole different story. I believe I was visited for a few reasons. I've always been in tune with otherworldly beings. My grandpa's last words were to me. I was his favorite because I was a 6-year-old girl. Apparently, that is the age he would molest his girls. I believe the Reaper visited me to teach my grandfather a lesson, to show him one last reason of why he's going where he needs to go. I do wonder why he wanted me to see them, though. Obviously, that was a pretty traumatic experience to leave a 6-year-old with. If anyone else has seen the Grim Reaper, please share. All my friends look at me like I'm crazy when I share this with them. Thanks for reading. This is my first ever post I'm making on Reddit, so let me apologize in advance if I make a few typing mistakes along the way. This is a story about my childhood that I've never told to anyone because my parents are very strong Christian believers, and so I never was able to open up to them about it because I was afraid of what they might think of me, because as Christians, they believe that if you're a child of God, then all these evil spirits and demons can't harm you or come near you. This was about 12 years ago. I was 9 years old at the time. It was roughly around 10 p.m. that night. My sister and I said our prayer and went to bed. We had a bunk bed at the time. She was on top and I was on the bottom. That night, out of nowhere, I woke up in the middle of the night. I would say I was roughly sleeping for about 4 hours. I opened my eyes, turned to the right side of my bed, and I saw a little girl. She was wearing a white dress. Her hair was super long, pretty much to her kneecap. She was sleeping right next to me on my bed. I was 9 years old at the time, so my first instinct wasn't to assume it was a ghost. I thought it was my sister, but I knew she didn't have long hair like that, so I decided to hug her still, assuming it's my sister. And when I reached out for the hug, I remember vaguely feeling how cold she was. And so I tried, and, well, I couldn't distinguish any features on her face, only the shape of her body. And so I started feeling confused, and so I tried to hop off my bed to turn on the light to see who was, and for some reason, who was she in my bed? I wasn't able to get off my bed for almost 30 seconds. It felt like there was a wall covering every corner of my bed, and I couldn't get out of bed. But again, I was so afraid, because my 9-year-old self didn't know what a ghost or spirit was. And so finally, I tried to get off my bed after 30 seconds passed. And boom. I was finally able to get off my bed. And I remember looking up on the bunk bed to see if my sister was up there. And unfortunately, she was. So I looked back down at my bed and still saw the little girl with long hair and her white dress. I turned on the lights to finally see who this little girl was. And as soon as I turned on the lights and looked at my bed, she was gone. I'm 21 years old now. Nothing else happened to me in that house. It was just that one night. Do you guys think it was some sort of spirit? FYI, my parents sold the house to my aunt. Until this day, they live there, and they say so many things happen throughout the nights and that they swear it's haunted. But my parents are like, there's no way because we've lived there and nothing ever happened to us. Since, you know, they don't know about my experience. What do you all think?